The sirens rolled into Willow Creek Landing so loud, they rattled my kitchen window, and there was Brenda Mallory, our HOA president, standing on my porch with my truck key fob clenched in her hand, like she'd just won a prize at a carnival. She was telling 911 I was threatening an HOA official, doing that tight little smile she always wore when she thought she had someone cornered. Then the responding officer asked one simple question, "Ma'am. Why were you reaching through his kitchen window screen at 6 in the morning?" And yeah, that happened. I moved into this neighborhood outside Hollis Springs, Georgia. For one reason, Peace, I wanted the kind of boring life where the biggest drama is. Whether your grill propane runs out mid-burger. You know what I mean? The streets were clean, the lawns were trimmed. There was a little pond with ducks that looked like it came straight out of a real estate brochure, and the HOA was pitched like some helpful little guardrail that kept everything nice. We protect property values, they said. We keep standards, they said. And I thought, sure, fine. I can handle a rule or two. I'm not some wild outlaw who needs to paint his house neon green. What they didn't tell me was that in Willow Creek Landing, standards came with a face, a clipboard, and a personal appetite for power, and her name was Brenda. Brenda was mid-50s, always in a blazer, even when it was hot enough to fry an egg on the sidewalk, always carrying a measuring tape like it was a badge. And she had this way of talking that made you feel like you were 12, and she was the principal, even if you were standing on your own property. The first time she came for me was a Saturday morning around 8:10. I was in the kitchen making coffee. My keys were in a ceramic bowl by the window like they always were, and I heard 3 hard knocks. Not neighborly knocks, not, "Hey, you home" knocks. It was that "I'm here to ruin your day" knock. I opened the door, and she didn't even say hello. She held a yellow notice out in front of her, like she was serving legal papers. "Unit 27, she said, like I was a filing cabinet. "Parking violation section 4.9. I actually looked behind me, like maybe she had the wrong house. "Parking violation?" "My truck is in my driveway." Brenda flicked her measuring tape open with this dramatic snap, walked right past me like my front step was her office, and pointed at my truck with a theatrical little sigh. "Your rear bumper extends 2 inches beyond the approved boundary." 2 inches. I stared at her. Then I stared at my driveway, and I swear I looked for some magical painted line I'd never noticed before, because there was nothing, just plain concrete and grass. No marker, no curb, nothing that could possibly mean approved boundary, unless you were making it up in your head. I tried to keep my voice calm, because I've learned that arguing with someone like Brenda is like pouring gasoline on a campfire. It doesn't solve anything. It just gives them a show. So I said, "Can you show me what boundary you're measuring from?" She pointed at thin air and said, "Dead serious. The driveway edge. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it." I repeated, mostly to stop myself from laughing in her face, because I could feel the irritation rising and I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. She tapped the notice with her pen and said, "This is a warning. Next time escalates. Fines, vendor enforcement, immobilization. Impound." That word made me blink. Impound. The HOA can impound my truck. Brenda's eyes narrowed like I'd insulted her personally. "Don't be disrespectful. We have procedures. We have vendors. We handle chronic violators." And that's when I noticed something that had nothing to do with my truck. Her eyes kept sliding past my shoulder into my kitchen. Not casually. Not politely. It was this sharp little dart of attention that landed on my key bowl by the window and stayed there just a beat too long. In that tiny moment, my stomach did this cold drop, because the 2 inches was never the point. She wasn't measuring my bumper. She was measuring me, seeing if I'd fold, seeing if I'd get angry, seeing if I'd be easy to bully. And when her eyes locked onto my keys, I realized she had already moved on to step 2 in her own head. So I did what I do when someone starts playing games with reality I documented. I lifted my phone and said very calmly, "I'm going to take a photo of this," and I made sure her face was in the frame, because if there's one thing people like Brenda hate, it's evidence that doesn't rely on their version of the story. Her smile tightened into something sharp. "Pictures don't change policy." I shrugged. "No, but they change stories." That landed because her posture stiffened, like I'd poked a bruise. She stepped back, adjusted her clipboard, and delivered this line like she was doing me a favor. "Correct it by Monday at 5, or we move forward." Then she walked off with that little strut, like she owned the sidewalk. I shut the door and just stood there, coffee going cold, feeling that mix of disbelief and anger you get when someone tries to make you small in your own home. And I'll be honest, part of me wanted to march down to the HOA office and start a war right then and there. But another part of me, the part that's dealt with bullies before, knew that if I came in hot, she'd flip it. She'd make me the aggressive one. She'd do the whole "I'm just trying to keep standards" performance, and half the neighborhood would nod along, because it's easier to side with the person holding the clipboard than the person raising their voice. So I breathed, I counted to 10, and I decided I wasn't going to win this with volume. I was going to win it with truth. Here's the part some people still argue about. I left my keys in that bowl by the window, not because I'm careless, but because I wanted to know exactly how far she was willing to go. I angled my indoor camera toward that kitchen window. I checked the timestamp, I made sure my phone was charged, and I went about my day. Like everything was normal, while my gut kept whispering she's coming back. Around noon, I saw her walking past my house, slow and fake, pretending to admire landscaping, while her eyes kept flicking toward my window. Then later, she did it again and again, and each time it got less subtle, like she was building courage. That night at 9:18, I got a text from an unknown number final notice. Compliance required within 24 hours. Enforcement will proceed, no signature, no official letterhead. Just a little digital shove meant to make you feel alone. I sat there staring at my screen, thinking, who texts like that? Who talks like that? To another adult. And that's when the bitter part of me realized she probably talked like that to everyone. And it worked, because most people just want quiet. Most people would rather pay a dumb fine than get dragged into some neighborhood feud. Sunday morning, 6:04 a.m. The neighborhood was dead silent, and I heard this soft scraping against my kitchen window, like a branch rubbing on metal, except it was steady, deliberate. Human, I moved to the curtain and peeked out. And there she was, Brenda Mallory, HOA president, standing in my side yard like she belonged there, holding one of those long grabber poles people use to clean gutters. Except she'd taped a little hook on the end, like she was improvising a burglary tool. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my brain got weirdly calm, because this wasn't HOA nonsense anymore. This was crime, plain and simple. And the thing about crime is it doesn't care what color your blazer is. I hit record on my phone, checked the camera feed, and I watched her slide that hook through the tiny gap in my window screen, like she'd practiced it. She missed once, then again. Then the hook snagged the keyring, and the keys rose into the air. And I swear, her face lit up like a kid who'd just won the big stuffed bear at a fair. She reeled them in, slowly, dropped them into her palm, and instead of running, she stood there, turning them over, examining them. No shame, no panic, just entitlement. I opened my front door and stepped out, calm on the outside, furious on the inside. "Morning, Brenda," I said. Like we were neighbors, chatting about the weather. She spun around, startled, keys jingling, and for half a second I saw what she really was, a person caught red-handed. Then she snapped right back into her role. Chin-up voice, sharp. "Your vehicle is under enforcement hold. These keys are secured for community safety." "Community safety?" I repeated slow. "You reached into my home and took my property." "I did not steal," she snapped. "The board authorizes enforcement measures. You're non-compliant." I kept my hands open, not stepping toward her, because I could feel her baiting me. "Put my keys down, Brenda." She pulled her phone out like a gun. "If you come closer, I'm calling 911. I have documentation of your aggressive behavior." I actually smiled, because it was so predictable. "Call," I said. "Please call." She called right there on my lawn, telling the dispatcher I was threatening her, that she was performing lawful HOA enforcement. And across the street, my neighbor Mason stepped onto his porch in pajama pants, squinting like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And I just nodded at him, like, yeah, I know this is insane. While Brenda was performing for 911, I made my own call, calm and flat. "I need to report a theft in progress. My neighbor took my keys from inside my home. I have video." Brenda kept narrating like she was the hero. "He's been hostile for days. He's disrupting our community. He's defiant." And then she did the most unbelievable thing. She marched down my driveway to my truck, clicked the fob. The lights blinked, and she climbed into the driver's seat like she was checking a rental. I raised my voice just enough to be heard. "Step away from my vehicle." "Brenda." She started the engine. That sound hit me in the chest, in a way that's hard to explain, like someone crossing a line you didn't even think existed, because you assumed basic decency would stop them first. She leaned out the window and said real casual, "This unit is being relocated to the HOA staging area until fines are satisfied." I stood there with my phone recording, jaw tight. "Where is that?" And she smiled, like she loved the power of withholding information. "You'll receive that after cooperation." Then she backed out and drove off. In my truck, I'm not proud of the sound I made. It was half laugh, half choke, because the absurdity of it almost broke my brain. And for a split second, I felt that helpless flash that comes when someone steals from you and acts like you're the one who should apologize. 20 minutes later, she called me. Voice smooth, like she was calling about a missed package. "To resolve this, you'll sign a compliance statement and pay the fine plus an enforcement fee. Then your vehicle will be released." I put her on speaker so everything was recorded. "So you're demanding money to return my stolen truck?" "It's not stolen," she snapped. "It's secured." "That's extortion," I said, and I let it sit in the air. There was a pause. Then she shifted tactics. "I have relationships with local law enforcement. They take threats against HOA leadership very seriously." That line right there told me two things. One, she knew what she was doing was wrong, because innocent people don't start threatening connections. And two, she'd probably bullied other neighbors into silence using that same little myth. The idea that she was untouchable. Here's where the twist starts creeping in, because I'm going to be straight with you. I do work in law enforcement, not as some big shot, not as someone who wants special treatment. I'm a deputy in the county, and that's exactly why I didn't announce it at the beginning. Because I wanted this handled the way it would be handled. If I was just some guy with a truck, because if the rules only work when the victim has a badge, then the rules aren't rules. They're favors. So when the patrol cars rolled up 15 minutes later, lights flashing, I didn't puff my chest out. I didn't pull rank. I just opened my phone. Showed them the video of her fishing. My keys through the window screen. Showed them her standing there, admiring the key ring. Showed them the clip of her climbing into my truck, and played them the audio of her demanding money to release it. One of the officers exhaled through his nose and said, where would she keep it? And Mason, still on his porch, like he'd bought front row seats to a circus, yelled, behind the clubhouse, there's a locked gravel lot back there. We drove over, and sure enough, my truck was sitting behind the clubhouse gate under a sign that said something like, Operations, no trespassing, like she'd built herself a little pretend impound yard. Brenda was there too, standing with her clipboard talking to a tow driver, chin up, acting like she was running a government agency. When she saw the patrol cars, she actually brightened like she thought backup had arrived for her. She marched forward and said, "Thank goodness, officers, he threatened me. I'm conducting lawful enforcement." And I swear she said it with the confidence of someone who has never been told no in her entire life. The officer held up a hand and asked calm, "Ma'am, are you Brenda Mallory?" "Yes," she said proudly. "President." "Ma'am," he said, still calm. "We have video of you taking property from inside his home and removing his vehicle." "Turn around." Brenda blinked like she didn't understand English. "Excuse me. Turn around," he repeated, hands behind your back. You could literally see the moment her pretend power collided with real consequences, like a cartoon character running off a cliff and only realizing it after they're already in the air. Her voice went sharp. "You can't do this. I have authority." The cuffs clicked loud and final, and her face went pale as paper. She whipped her head toward me and hissed, "You set me up. You baited me." The officer asked for my ID, and I handed over my wallet without thinking. And that's when Brenda's eyes locked on the badge tucked inside. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then she whispered, "You're law enforcement." I looked at her. Not angry, not smug, just tired. "I'm a homeowner." "You robbed," I said. "That's what matters." But the look on her face wasn't just fear. It was realization. Because if she was willing to do this to me, thinking I was powerless, she'd absolutely done her smaller version of this to other people. The intimidation, the fines, the threats, the humiliation, all of it. They put her in the cruiser, and she tried one last line. Shaky now. This isn't over, and then the door shut with that heavy sound that ends arguments. I got my truck back. I got my keys back, and for the first time since moving into Willow Creek Landing, I felt like I could breathe again. But I'm going to tell you the truth. What stuck with me wasn't the satisfaction of seeing her cuffed. It was how easy it was for her to play queen for so long. Because the neighborhood let her. Because everyone stayed quiet to keep the peace. Because it's just HOA stuff. Because don't make waves. Because people assume bullies always win. If they have a title, and you don't. And here's the part that still splits people right down the middle. Some neighbors told me I should have shut it down the moment she handed me that fake 2-inch violation, that I should have gone straight to the board, straight to a lawyer, straight to someone higher. Others told me I did the right thing by staying calm and letting the evidence stack up. Because without proof, she would have flipped the story and painted me as the aggressor. And then there were a few loud folks who said I entrapped her because I left my keys visible, like I forced a grown woman to crawl up to my window with a hook tool at dawn. So I want to hear what you think seriously, because this isn't just about Brenda. It's about how communities deal with petty power and bullying. If you were in my shoes, would you have stopped it early and risked a messy he said, she said? Or would you have done what I did, kept your cool, recorded everything, and let the bully walk herself into consequences? And do you think it's wrong that I didn't reveal my job right away? Or do you think it mattered that this played out like it would for any regular person, because the law should protect everyone the same? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if I went too far or not far enough. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA bully, or any bully with a title, share what happened, because the more people talk about these situations, the harder it gets for folks like Brenda to hide behind clipboards and threats.